But whilst we pursue those strategies for changing our world, we've got to live in this world, and it's not always easy living in this world. I'm sure all of you in your homes, in your workplaces, in your local communities hit times when it's really difficult to keep going on. I've hit a few of those times myself. And so I wanted to conclude by sharing with you some tips, some strategies that have made a difference for me in navigating this world. The first of them is to be really clear about what your sense of purpose is. I'm lucky that I found my sense of purpose way back when in second year university. It's about education, about opportunity for all. And I, as a person in government, was crystal clear about my sense of purpose. When I became Prime Minister, it workload-wise was just beyond explanation. I was literally in a whirlwind of all of the things that I needed to do. A friend of mine, a man called Alan Milburn, who had served as the Secretary for Health in Tony Blair's government in the United Kingdom, rang me up to congratulate me. But he also gave me the single best piece of advice I've ever received across all of my political life. He said, "I know it's mayhem, I know you're not getting any sleep, but you still need to carve out some time, sit down, write out your sense of purpose, what you want your government to be about, carry it with you, it'll steady you on the most difficult days." And I did precisely that. I wrote out that sense of purpose on a sheet. I carried it with me in my handbag. When the going got ridiculously rough, I would get it back out and it would steady me. It would stop me being buffeted off course. Once, of course, I'd written out this sheet, I proudly rang back Alan Milburn and said, "I've taken your advice, I've written out my sense of purpose, I've got it with me." To which he then said, "I've given that advice to so many politicians and you're the first one who's ever taken it." So maybe I'm suggestible, but it really did make a difference for me. So I would say to you, have a think about it. What's the purpose of your life? What's the driving purpose that is all about you and what you want to achieve during your time on this earth? Write it out and carry it with you. Second, I, as Prime Minister and in my days in politics before that, needed to really work on my sense of self. Even as a younger politician, I'd watched women who were more senior than me, and I'd watched some of them get on this absolute roller coaster, where on a day of good headlines, you could see them striding around Parliament House, very happy with themselves, eyes up, very animated, clearly feeling very good. And then on a day of bad headlines about them, you could see that they'd closed inwards, hunched shoulders, not wanting to make eye contact, clearly feeling miserable about themselves. And I thought to myself as a young politician, you can't let yourself get on that roller coaster. And how irrational is it to be on that roller coaster? Because on both days, the days of good headlines and the days of bad headlines, actually you're the same person with the same mix of strengths and weaknesses. And so I deliberately sort of cultivated this sense of self which wasn't hostage to what was being said about me. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't take constructive criticism from colleagues, but some of the just awful stuff that goes around in traditional media and particularly in social media, I didn't let that get inside my head. And I became actually quite dispassionate. I could read some of the worst things about myself and be able to be analytical about how we were going to deal with them as a sort of press problem rather than taking them to heart. Now, maybe it's not ultimately good for you to harden your heart that much. I needed to. But I do think it's important for all of us to have this sense of self that's not hostage to the critiques of others. Because in today's world, you don't have to be on the public stage to potentially see horrible things read about you. People would see them on social media all the time. And so I think we've got to think about how we nurture our own sense of self And we've got to think about how we teach our daughters to nurture their sense of self as well, because all of their existence will be spent in this world where online criticism is everywhere, and online can be such a toxic environment for women. Now, if you're in any doubt about how to pick, some of this sort of toxic nonsense from constructive criticism, here's one tip that always worked for me. If it comes in on Twitter after midnight, then it's probably fueled by alcohol, not acumen, and you shouldn't let it get inside your head. Though I am conscious I'm here in the United States and it could be a tweet from President Trump, so maybe in that case you better read it.